Virginia.
Mr. President, prior to my remarks, I would ask permission that upon the conclusion of my remarks, Senator Shaheen be allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes before the initiation of the scheduled vote.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to express deep concern and frustration over President Trump's decision to approve the sale of advanced Nvidia H200 AI chips to the People's Republic of China. And I appreciate the fact that my colleague, Senator Coons, is on the floor, because I will conclude with a discussion of a bipartisan bill. National security agencies have long warned a bill that Senator Ricketts and Senator Coons have introduced.
I'm the senior senator from Delaware. For 15 years, I have invited home state senators to join me in dignified transfers at Dover Air Force Base. And I understand it is logistically very demanding. But this year has been the first time. In the last year, the two senators from Georgia joined for the dignified transfer of 3 Georgians, reservists, who died in an incident at Tower 22 in Jordan. More recently, the 2 senators from Illinois joined when 4 soldiers died in a tragic training accident in Lithuania. Yesterday, the state of Iowa and its delegation really showed up. The governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds, of course, the Adjutant General Stephen Osborne, Major General Stephen Osborne of the Iowa National Guard, 3 members of the House delegation, Congresswoman Ashley Hinson, Congressman Jack Nunn, Congressman Randy Feenstra, and our 2 senators, Senator Chuck Grassley and Senator Joni Ernst, who served as a colonel and deployed with the Iowa National Guard. Senator Ernst accompanied the remains of the 2 fallen members of the Iowa National Guard all the way from Ramstein, and it was our honor in Delaware to welcome them to our state, and it is my honor to rise briefly in thanks for the service of the men and women of AFMAO, which is the Armed Forces Mortuary Affairs Unit, and Dover Air Force Base. This is a solemn duty, and one that the men and women of Dover Air Force Base carry out with exceptional grace, care, and skill. I want to close by thanking all the volunteers from our community in Dover, Delaware, who dedicate their time to making sure that the families of the fallen are welcomed, are supported, are prayed over, and know that our nation is grateful for their service and their sacrifice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator Virginia.
Mr. President, prior to my remarks, I would ask permission that upon the conclusion of my remarks, Senator Shaheen be allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes before the initiation of the scheduled vote.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to express deep concern and frustration over President Trump's decision to approve the sale of advanced Nvidia H200 AI chips to the People's Republic of China. And I appreciate the fact that my colleague, Senator Coons, is on the floor, because I will conclude with a discussion of a bipartisan bill that Senator Ricketts and Senator Coons have introduced into the Senate that I think is a very important piece of legislation. I am worried that the transfer of these chips will compromise U.S. security and enable the People's Republic of China to catch up in one area where the U.S. has a significant and very qualitative advantage over the PRC. For decades, under administrations of both parties, the United States has adhered to a simple principle: we do not sell our most advanced security-critical technology to adversaries. That principle exists for a reason. Advanced semiconductors like Nvidia's H200 chip are not consumer gadgets. They're matters of national security. They're the foundation of the future of warfare. They are our edge, the United States' edge in the development of the technologies of the future. Right now, that future is up for grabs. We protect our chips because they preserve America's advantage in space, cyberspace, and importantly, nuclear deterrence. During President Trump's first term, the administration clearly understood this, and they expanded export controls on semiconductor technologies to China, placing strict controls on firms like Huawei. At the start of this administration, again, President Trump publicly embraced the long-standing policy, export controls were treated as national security decisions, as they should be. But that consensus apparently has not lasted. It was challenged very aggressively by corporate interests, most notably Nvidia's CEO Jensen Huang, who is a frequent presence at the White House. The status quo was also challenged by President Trump's sort of self-proclaimed AI and crypto czar, billionaire David Sachs, who argued that the United States should give sensitive articles to China in order to make China dependent upon American technology. That argument sounds clever, but it isn't. By that logic, should we sell China F-35 fighter jets, advanced missile systems, top-tier satellite technologies? Of course we shouldn't. We don't preserve our leverage by handing our rivals the very tools that they need to close the gap they have with us. We preserve leverage by maintaining advantages that they can't replicate quickly or cheaply. And Mr. President, they are attempting to close this gap by cheating. The Justice Department just announced within the last few days, a dismantling of a major China-linked AI smuggling network, Operation Gatekeeper, seizing more than $50 million worth of these Nvidia chips illegally exported to China. They're trying to steal this technology, reverse engineer, and take the intellectual property to eliminate this edge that we have. The administration initially claimed it would only permit sales of inferior chips, such as the Nvidia H200, not the H200, hardware explicitly described as degraded and limited. But China declined. They waited, believing that President Trump would fold. And that's what happened. President Trump, within the last week, has announced that he plans to approve sales of the H200, one of the Nvidia's most powerful AI chips, second only to the very top of its product line. Let's be clear what this chip is. The H200 is used to train and deploy frontier AI systems that U.S. national security agencies have long warned have numerous military and intelligence applications. Previous administrations working with allies imposed export controls precisely because they worked. China fell behind. Even the CEO of China's leading AI firm has admitted publicly that the access to advanced chips is their biggest bottleneck. President Trump is now solving this problem for China. The administration claims that in exchange, the United States will receive a share of the revenue. 25% of the sales is what we're being told. But that admission should alarm us. Decisions that were once made purely on our national security priorities are now apparently up for sale. And the administration justification that this will somehow keep China hooked on U.S. technology doesn't withstand normal scrutiny. We've got decades of evidence that China basically steals foreign technology as fast as it can. They won't be hooked on these chips. They'll take these chips, reverse engineer them, and produce their own and wipe out the edge that we now have with China in this critical defense technology. Now, less than a week after President Trump's announcement, one of the deal's leading proponents, David Sachs, is already starting to backtrack on his theory about we should give these articles to China. And let's look at the facts surrounding the timing of this announcement. Nvidia's CEO has attended million-dollar-a-plate fundraisers for the president. His company donated to build the president's ballroom. And now, after months of lobbying and contributions, Nvidia got what it wanted. I'm very, very nervous that the president is bartering away this edge and may barter away other edges to those who are lobbying and contributing to him. And this is a pattern that we've seen, transactional politics jeopardizing our security. China is reaping the rewards of this. They're already leading or rapidly catching up in so many critical industries. Why would we give up an edge in this one? The American people are watching this play out. They're particularly concerned about China, about China's advances, and about China giving up the edge we have over China in this key area. That's why I've signed on with many in this body. I think there are now 10 co-sponsors, equally divided between Democrats and Republicans. The Senator Ricketts and Coons Safe Chips Act, which would insist upon rigorous export controls over these chips, particularly as they might be transferred to China, the People's Republic of North Korea, Iran, and Russia. The number of bipartisan co-sponsors of this legislation and some similar legislation that is offered by other members, Senators Banks, Senator Collins, is growing. And I urge my colleagues to get on board with this legislation and make sure that we don't harm our national security by transferring technologies of such incredible importance to our country. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.